I'll be comfortable. I'll be comfortable with this. You can start. I can start. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chapter 21. The gopis attracted by the flute. With the arrival of the beautiful autumn season, the waters in the lakes and rivers became as clear as crystal and filled with fragrant lotus flowers, and breezes blew very pleasantly. At that time, Krishna entered the forest of Vrindavana with the cows and cowherd boys. Krishna was very much pleased with the atmosphere of the forest, where flowers bloomed and bees and drones hummed very jubilantly. While the birds, trees, and plants were all looking very happy, Krishna, tending the cows and accompanied by Sri Balarama and the cowherd boys, began to vibrate his transcendental flute. After hearing the vibration of the flute of Krishna, the gopis in the Vrindavan remembered him and began to talk amongst themselves about how nicely Krishna was playing his flute. When the gopis were describing the sweet vibration of Krishna's flute, they also remembered their pastimes with him. Thus, their minds became disturbed and they were unable to describe completely the beautiful vibration. While discussing the transcendental vibration, they remembered also how Krishna dressed, decorated with a peacock feather on his head, just like a dancing actor, and with blue flowers pushed over his ear. His garment glowed yellow gold, and he was garlanded with a Vaijayanti necklace. Dressed in such an attractive way, Krishna filled up the holes of his flute with the nectar emanating from his lips. So they remembered him, entering the forest of Vrindavana, which is always glorified by the footprints of Krishna and his companions. Krishna was very expert in playing the flute, and the gopis were captivated by the sound vibration, which was attractive not only to them, but to all living creatures who heard it. One of the gopis told her friends, "The highest perfection of the eyes is to see Krishna and Balarama entering the forest and playing their flutes and tending the cows and their friends." Persons who are constantly engaged in the transcendental meditation of seeing Krishna internally and externally by thinking of him playing the flute, entering the Vrindavana forest, and tending the cows with the cowherd boys have really attained the perfection of samadhi. Samadhi, trance, means absorption of all the activities of the senses in a particular object, and the gopis indicate that the pastimes of Krishna are the perfection of all meditation and samadhi. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita that anyone who is always absorbed in the thought of Krishna is the topmost of all yogis. Another gopi expressed her opinion that Krishna and Balarama, while tending the cows with the cowherd boys, appeared just like actors going to play on a dramatic stage. Krishna was dressed in glowing garments of yellow, Balarama in blue, and they held new twigs of mango tree, peacock feathers, and bunches of flowers in their hands. Dressed with garlands of lotus flowers, they were sometimes singing very sweetly among their friends. One gopi told her friends, "How is it Krishna and Balarama are looking so beautiful?" Another gopi said, "My dear friends, we cannot even think of his bamboo flute. What sort of pious activities did it execute so that it is now enjoying the nectar of the lips of Krishna, which is actually the property of us gopis? Krishna sometimes kisses the gopis. Therefore, the transcendental nectar of his lips is available only to them." So the gopis asked, "How is it possible that the flute, which is nothing but a bamboo rod, is always engaged in enjoying the nectar from Krishna's lips?" Because the flute is engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord, the mother and the father of the flute must be happy. The lakes and the rivers are considered to be the mothers of the trees because the trees live simply by drinking water. So the waters of the lakes and rivers of Vrindavana were in a happy mood, full of blooming lotus flowers, because the waters were thinking, "How is it that our son, the bamboo rod, is enjoying the nectar of Krishna's lips?" The bamboo trees standing by the banks of the rivers and the lakes were also happy to see their descendant so engaged in the service of the Lord. just as persons who are advanced in transcendental knowledge take pleasure in seeing their descendants engage in the service of the Lord. The trees were overwhelmed with joy and were incessantly yielding honey, which flowed from the beehives hanging on their branches. Another gopi spoke thus to her friends about Krishna. Dear friends, our Vrindavana is proclaiming the glories of the entire earth because this planet is glorified by the lotus footprints of the son of Devaki. Besides that, when Govinda plays his flute, the peacocks immediately become mad, as if they had heard the rumbling of a new cloud. When all the animals and trees and plants, either on the top of Govardhana hill or in the valley, see the dancing of the peacock, they all stand still and listen to the transcendental sound of the flute with great attention. We think that this boon is not possible or available on any other planet. Although the gopis were village cowherd women and girls, they had extensive Vedic knowledge. Such is the effect of Vedic civilization. People in general would learn the highest truths of the Vedas simply by hearing from authoritative sources. Another gopi said, My dear friends, just see the deer. Although they are dumb animals, they have approached the son of Maharaja Nanda, Krishna. Not only are they attracted by the dress of Krishna and Balarama, but as soon as they hear the playing of the flute, the deer, along with their husbands, offer respectful obeisances unto the Lord by looking at him with great affection. The gopis were envious of the deer because the deer were able to offer their service to Krishna along with their husbands. The gopis thought themselves not so fortunate because whenever they wanted to go to Krishna, their husbands were not very happy. Another gopi said, My dear friends, Krishna is so nicely dressed that he appears to be the impetus to various kinds of ceremonies held by the women folk. Even the wives of the denizens of heaven become attracted after hearing the transcendental sound of his flute. Although they were traveling in the air in their airplanes, enjoying the company of their husbands, on hearing the sound of Krishna's flute, they immediately become perturbed. Their hair is loosened and their tight belts are slackened. This means that the transcendental sound of the flute of Krishna extended to all corners of the universe. Also, it is significant that the gopis knew about the different kinds of airplanes flying in the sky. Another gopi said to her friends, My dear friends, the cows are also charmed as soon as they hear the transcendental sound of the flute of Krishna. It sounds to them like the pouring of nectar, and they immediately spread their long ears just to catch the liquid nectar of the flute. As for the calves, they are seen with the nipples of their mothers pressed in their mouths, but they cannot suck the milk. They remain stuck with the devotion, and tears glide down from their eyes, illustrating vividly how they are embracing Krishna heart to heart. These phenomena indicate that even the cows and calves in Vrindavana knew how to cry for Krishna and embrace him heart to heart. Actually, the perfection of Krishna consciousness can be culminated in the shedding of tears from the eyes. Another young gopi told her mother, My dear mother, the birds who are all looking at Krishna playing on his flute are sitting very attentively on the branches and twigs of different trees. From their feathers, it appears that they have forgotten features. From their features, it appears that they have forgotten everything and are engaged only in hearing Krishna's flute. This proves that they are not ordinary birds. They are great sages and devotees, and just to hear Krishna's flute, they have appeared in Vrindavana forest as birds. Great sages and scholars are interested in Vedic knowledge, but the essence of Vedic knowledge is stated in the Bhagavad-Gita. Vedyas cha sarvayar aham eva vedayaha. Through the knowledge of the Vedas, Krishna has to be understood. From the behavior of these birds, it appeared that they were great scholars in Vedic knowledge and that they took to Krishna's transcendental vibration and rejected all branches of Vedic knowledge. Even the river Yamuna, very much desiring to embrace the lotus feet of Krishna after hearing the transcendental vibration of his flute, broke her fierce waves to flow very nicely with lotus flowers in her hands, just to present flowers to Mukunda with deep feeling. The scorching heat of the autumn sunshine was sometimes intolerable, and therefore the clouds in the sky appeared in sympathy above Krishna and Balarama and their boyfriends while they engaged in blowing their flutes. The clouds served as a soothing umbrella over their heads just to make friendship with Krishna. The Aborigine girls became Abra- Aborigine. The Aborigine girls became fully satisfied when they smeared their faces and breasts with the dust of Vrindavana, which was reddish from the touch of Krishna's lotus feet. The Aborigine girls had very full breasts and they were also very lusty. But when their lovers touched their breasts, the girls were not very much satisfied. When they came out into the midst of the forest, they saw that while Krishna was walking, some of the leaves and creepers of Vrindavana had turned reddish from the kumkuma powder which fell from his lotus feet. His lotus feet are held by the gopis on their breast, which are smeared with kumkuma powder. But when Krishna travels in the Vrindavan forest with Balarama and his boyfriends, the reddish powder falls on the ground. So the lusty Aborigine girls, while looking toward Krishna playing his flute, saw the reddish kumkuma on the ground and immediately took it and smeared it over their faces and breasts. In this way, they became fully satisfied, although they were not satisfied when their lovers touched their breast. All material lusty desires can be immediately satisfied if one comes in contact with Krishna consciousness. Another gopi began to praise the unique position of Govardhana hill in this way. How fortunate is this Govardhana hill, for it is enjoying the association of Lord Krishna and Balarama, who are accustomed to walking on it. Thus, Govardhana is always in touch with the lotus feet of the Lord. And because Govardhana hill is so obliged to Lord Krishna and Balarama, it is supplying different kinds of fruits, roots, and herbs, as well as very pleasing crystal water from its lakes, in presentation to the Lord. The best presentation offered by Govardhana hill, however, is newly grown grass for the cows and calves. Govardhana hill knows how to please the Lord by pleasing his most beloved associates, the cows and the cowherd boys. Another gopi said, everything appears wonderful when Krishna and Balarama travel in the forest of Vrindavana, playing their flutes and making intimate friendship with all kinds of moving and non-moving living creatures. When Krishna and Balarama play on their transcendental flutes, the moving creatures become stunned and stop their activities, and the non-moving living creatures, like trees and plants, begin to shiver with ecstasy. These are the wonderful reactions to the vibration of the transcendental flutes of Krishna and Balarama. Krishna and Balarama carried binding ropes on their shoulders and in their hands, just like ordinary cowherd boys. While milking cows, cowherd boys bind the cow's hind legs with a small rope. This rope almost always hangs from the shoulders of cowherd boys, and it was not absent from the shoulders of Krishna and Balarama. In spite of their being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they played exactly like cowherd boys, and therefore everything became wonderful and attractive. While Krishna was engaged in tending the cows in the forest of Vrindavana or on Govardhana hill, the gopis in the village were always absorbed in thinking of him and discussing his different pastimes. This is the perfect example of Krishna consciousness, to somehow or other remain always engrossed in thoughts of Krishna. The vivid example is always present in the behavior of the gopis. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya declared that no one can worship the Supreme Lord by any method which is better than the method of the gopis. The gopis were not born in very high Brahmana or Kshatriya families. They were born in the families of Vaishyas and not in big mercantile communities, but in the families of cowherd men. They were not very well educated, although they heard all sorts of knowledge from the Brahmanas, the authorities of Vedic knowledge. The gopis' only purpose was to remain always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. Thus ends The Bhakti-Vedanta purport of the 21st chapter of Krishna, the gopi attracted by the flute. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Om Gyanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Jatapada Kamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vancha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Bhyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So here we find the perfection of samadhi. Yogis are going through great trouble to fix their minds in meditation on the absolute truth, to get free from material existence. But here, the gopis have surpassed the great yogis because their minds are fully absorbed in thinking of the absolute truth in his highest feature as the personality of Godhead, Krishna. The Vrindavan itself is described, and these are all meant to attract our minds. The mind can be attracted to the beautiful picture of Vrindavan as described here in Srimad Bhagavatam, with the clear water, lakes and rivers, with the pleasant breezes, with the blossoming flowers, and with Krishna and Balaram strolling through the land. The picture is there in Prabhupada's apartment. Krishna and Balaram are there surrounded by their cows and playing on their flutes in Vrindavan. Well, the gopis, when Krishna went to the pasturing grounds, the gopis couldn't come. They had to stay at home and perform their household duties. But this is the subject matter that was in which their minds were absorbed and which they were talking about with one another. They would hear the vibration of Krishna's flute, and the flute itself becomes a topic for discussion. While living in Puri, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would relish hearing such verses and speaking about such verses. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we'd find that Swarup Damodar would recite a verse, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or one of the Lord's associates. And the Lord would pick up that verse and just start roaming with it, just exploring, not even exploring, being carried away by that verse and thinking of all the different features of Krishna that the verse would call to mind. And he would go on in ecstatic remembrance of Krishna. Well, this is called Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalaya. The Bhagavatam is Rasamalaya, the reservoir of transcendental tastes. And the pure devotee drinks that nectar, relishes that nectar of Krishna's pastimes, and leaves behind the material world. Even while situated in the material world, by thinking of these activities of Krishna, his mind is carried away to Vrindavan. The gopis would hear the sound of the flute, and they would think of Krishna and Balaram as described here. They would see the picture of Krishna, how he was in their minds, how he was decorated with peacock feathers, how he had blue flowers pushed over his ear, how he was dressed like a dancing actor, how he was garlanded, how he was playing the flute, how the land of Vrindavan was glorified by Krishna's lotus footprints. And they said, this is the perfection for the eyes. To see Krishna and Balaram wandering about Vrindavan. And with Krishna holding the flute to his lips. Yes. Tending their cows. So in this way, they were seeing Krishna internally and externally by being always absorbed in thought of Krishna. And Prabhupada cites Bhagavad-Gita that yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yo mam samev yuktutamo. Krishna appeared just like the gopis were talking among themselves. This is the perfection of gossip. If we're going to gossip, then this is the right topic. Prajalpa. There's a tendency to talk and talk, to get on the keyboard and type something, or to get together and talk and talk. So this is the perfection of that desire to communicate, that desire to say something, that desire to share one's thoughts with others or hear the thoughts of others, to go on being enchanted by the qualities of Krishna. So they were remembering Krishna, how Krishna is dressed in yellow, Balaram is dressed in blue. They looked like actors about to play on the stage. Sometimes they're singing, and they look so beautiful. They think of the flute. What pious activities must the flute have performed to be getting the nectar of Krishna's lips? This is one of the verses that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was hearing, and he goes on and on how the nectar of Krishna. Actually, he heard, yes, how Krishna is playing on his flute. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was taking a little prasadam and remembering this prasadam has been tasted by Krishna. And in that connection, he remembered the flute of Krishna, which was pressed to Krishna's lips. And he was going on in ecstasy. And the parents of the flute, the rivers, the lakes, they must be very happy. Just like when a child is a devotee, the parents become very happy that the child is chanting Hare Krishna, the child is rendering service, the child is bowing down before the deity. So the parents become so happy. So imagine the parents of the flute, how they felt that our son is enjoying the nectar from Krishna's lips. Krishna's always keeping this bamboo flute with him. The whole earth is glorious, one Gopi said, because it's glorified by the lotus footprints of Krishna. And when Krishna plays his flute, the peacocks become mad and begin dancing, and the other animals see the dancing of the peacocks and become stunned, and they just listen to the transcendental sound with full attention. Well, the other planets don't have this. The Earth is so fortunate that Krishna is here. And Prabhupada commented, said that they were just cowherd girls, but they knew about other planets also. And the dumb animals, the deer, the cows, they become stunned. They hear the sound and they just become transfixed, hearing that sound. The deer, they think, are more fortunate because the deer and their husbands can both be attracted to Krishna. Our husbands are another story. The cows and calves spread their long ears just to hear the transcendental vibration. And tears roll from their eyes. And Prabhupada said that this is the perfection of Krishna consciousness, to cry for Krishna. The birds are absorbed in the sound of Krishna's flute. And it seems that they're great sages and devotees who've come to Vrindavan in the form of birds. The great sages are interested in Vedic knowledge. This is the perfection of Vedic knowledge, to be absorbed in thought of Krishna. And even the Jamuna wants to embrace the lotus feet of Krishna, so she approaches with her gentle waves to present flowers to the Lord with great feeling. The clouds become friendly to Krishna. They're sympathetic. Krishna is blue, we're blue. So there's some affinity. And so they spread like a canopy above the Krishna and the boys to shield them from the scorching sun and to make friends with Krishna. The Aborigine girls are mentioned. They're very lusty, but they're not satisfied by embracing their lovers or having their lovers touch their breasts. they're still lusty. But when they saw the kumkum on the ground of Vrindavan, from the lotus feet of Krishna, they spread their faces and breasts with the kumkum, and they became satisfied. Aborigines means Adivasis. They're Adivasi girls. They're like primitive. But they're also attracted by Krishna. And Prabhupada comments, all material lusty desires can be at once satisfied if one comes in contact with Krishna consciousness. And the gopis also glorified the Govardhan hill. The Govardhan is supplying water, nice drinks for the Krishna and Balaram and the cows, water for them to drink, soft grass for the cows. The Govardhan knows that to please Krishna, I should please the cows because they're very dear to Krishna. So the Govardhan is supplying all of these things, as well as caves and other places for Krishna to sport, and providing roots and herbs. So Govardhan is the best servant of Krishna, Haridasa Varya. When Krishna and Balaram play their flutes, then the moving creatures become stunned, the non-moving creatures start to melt and shiver. And Krishna and Balaram look just like ordinary cowherd boys. They're carrying ropes for binding the calves. When you milk the calves, first you tie up the back legs of the calves of the cows so that they don't kick. And you let the calves drink a little of the milk, and then you milk the cow. So those ropes are there, and they were there on the shoulders of Krishna, Balaram. Lord Vishnu is carrying his insignia, Shankha Chakra Gada Padma. And Krishna and Balaram are carrying these ropes for herding cows, binding the cows. So they played just like cowherd boys, and they were so beautiful and attractive, more so than Narayan in Vaikuntha with his splendor and his entourage and his royal opulence. Krishna was more attractive. So in this way, the gopis were always absorbed in thought of Krishna and talk about Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya said that this is the perfection. Ramya kaschidupasana vajavadhu vargena ya kolpita. There's no better means of worshiping Krishna than the means devised by the gopis. All right, are there some comments or questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. When we were reading in the text and they were mentioning the Aborigine girls and it didn't please their husbands that this satisfied them more than their husbands did, it made me wonder, the husbands of the gopis, if everyone in Vrindavan their sole purpose is to serve Krishna, did they also get upset when the gopis left to
It doesn't
serve
mention here,
Krishna?
by the way, that anything about the husbands of the Aborigine girls. The Aborigine girls weren't very much satisfied by their husbands. That's mentioned. And the gopis were envying the deer because the black deer could associate with Krishna along with their husbands. They could both be attracted. Whereas the husbands of the gopis weren't very pleased when the gopis were attracted. But still, your question is there. It appears that we don't hear very much about the husbands of the gopis. They're almost like props, it seems. Their main function is to enhance the transcendental relationship between Krishna and the gopis by presenting some obstacle. When there needs to be an obstacle, otherwise you don't get the peak of emotion. People who write dramas and film plays know this, that you have a hero, and then you have a goal that he has to achieve, and then you have all these obstacles in the middle. If there's no obstacles, there's no drama. The hero just, drives to the destination and does the needful, and okay, we're done. No, there has to be monsters or gangsters or some sort of obstacles for the hero to overcome, and that way he becomes a hero. And in the case of Krishna and the gopis, there needs to be some transgression of morality. There needs to be some, why? Because that increases the taste. Just like in gambling, there's risk. The risk itself is creates excitement. The risk and the more you risk, the greater everybody's sitting on the edge of the table, and they're watching what's going to happen when the wheel is turned or the dice are thrown, because the stakes are high and everybody's adrenaline is pumping, and someone's risking big money. Or here, the gopis are risking their reputations, they're risking everything, because they're overstepping the principles of morality, which, now everybody oversteps the principles of morality. So, overstepping becomes the norm. But in Vedic culture, these principles are so ingrained that to overstep the principles of morality means losing everything. You lose your reputation, you lose, loss of reputation is everything. What is that? Sambhavitasya chakirtir maranad atirichite. To lose your reputation is worse than death. So the gopis were risking all of that just to be with Krishna. We were hearing yesterday from Kadambakana Maharaj that they didn't think, should I take this risk? Should I not take this? They were attracted like that. But it means that they set aside everything, their husbands, their families, their safety because they went to the forest, everything. So there needs to be some kind of obstacle like that so that they can overstep it. There's no immorality in the spiritual world because Krishna is the standard of morality. Whatever he does is by definition moral. There are no mundane rules of morality that can apply to Krishna. Name karmani limpanti. There's no activities that can contaminate Krishna. So he's the standard of Vedic. Tatra shir vijayo bhutir juvanitir matir. Wherever there's Krishna, there's all morality. But in order for this taste to rise to this high level, there needs to be boundaries. There need to be boundaries for the Krishna and the gopis to overstep. So that those boundaries are created in the form of these so-called husbands. That arrangement is made by Yoga Maya, that these apparent husbands are there. They're not actually husbands, but it appears that they're husbands. So that's their role. We don't hear more about that. We don't hear about their, a little bit we hear about the dealings of Abhimanyu and Krishna and something, but it's all in that spirit of enhancing the tastes of Krishna's relationship with the gopis. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
We hear from this chapter how important the settings of nature are in terms of like playing a part in the Leela of Krishna. You know, we hear about the river Jamuna, the flowers, the trees, you know. But it seems like that in the modern concept is people worship Krishna, but they tend to neglect this important aspect. How important it is for devotees to live in pristine surroundings, you know, like with basically living next to natural kind of.
How important is it for devotees to live in a pristine or natural environment?
Yeah, in order to worship Krishna,
In order
meditate.
to worship Krishna.
Yeah.
It's not essential.
Okay.
The Prabhupada quoted that the countryside is in the mode of goodness, cities are in the mode of passion, the liquor house is in the mode of ignorance, and the temple is transcendental. So from that point of view, it's important for the devotees to have the atmosphere of the temple or to have their homes be like temples with spiritual atmosphere. That's what Srila Prabhupada emphasized. Not so we, and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he had his sadhus living in the cities for the sake of preaching. So for those who are neophytes, it may be helpful to live in the countryside in a peaceful atmosphere. But once one is a little advanced, it's better to live in the cities. In the countryside, you'll fall into Maya. Oh, the birds are so nice. The river's so pleasant. And we'll just be, what is that? Sukha sangena badnati jnana sangena chanika. One is bound, in the mode of goodness, one is bound to a sense of happiness, to a sense of knowledge. So better to live in the cities than preach. That was the policy of Srila Saraswati Thakur. Or Srila Prabhupada gave the idea that devotees can make communities where this Vrindavan atmosphere prevails. Gita Nagari, New Vrindavan, such places, and recreate the Vrindavan atmosphere, and in that way live in Vrindavan and attract others to live in Vrindavan. So that's also very good. Otherwise, just to live in the countryside and not have the association of devotees, not have engagement in devotional service, in serious devotional service, that's not so good. Otherwise, countryside is nice, for bhajan, for chanting, nice peaceful atmosphere. But more important to have the association of devotees. That's it's not one of the items of devotional service, live in the country. But associate with devotees is one of the main items of devotional service.
Thank you. I have a second question. Since we were discussing the sound of the flute of Krishna, was it the sound of Krishna's flute that compelled Lord Brahma to recite the Brahma Samhita?
It doesn't say that it compelled him, but by hearing the sound of the flute, he became enlightened and spoke.
Thank you.
Something else? Yes.
Question other than context. Maharaj, once...
Outside the context of the class? Anyone else have...
ISKCON. ISKCON related to ISKCON, Maharaj.
Anyone have any other questions or comments related to the class? We'll come to other questions later. Yes.
Харе Кришна Махарадж. В тексте говорится, что поскольку Гавардхан считает себя в долгу перед Кришной и Баларамой, он всегда готов преподнести им свои дары. In the text it is said that since Govardhan feels like he owns something to Krishna and Balaram, he always feels like he should provide something for them as well. И у меня вопрос, какой долг у Гавардхана перед Кришной с Баларамой? So my question is, what does he own to Krishna and Balaram?
It's not a question of debt, it's a question of love. Say debt here? So obliged. Feels so obliged to Krishna and Balaram. Means appreciative. It's not exactly like a debt, but it's appreciative. Let's see what the verse is. Hantaya Madhya Bala Haridasa Varyu. Can you pick up that verse? Hantaya Madhya Bala Haridasa Varyu Tad Rama Krishna Chadanas Padasha Pramoda Manam Tanoti. I guess that's manam, huh? Tanoti Sahago Kaniyos. Out of great respect for Krishna and Balaram. Manam? How is it translated? Sahago Kaniyos Tivarya Pani Asuya Vasakanda Kandamunai. Yeah, manam, respect. It's such high regard for Krishna and Balaram, such devotion to Krishna and Balaram, such appreciation for Krishna and Balaram. And if there's an obligation, it's an obligation of love. Obligation means that if I love you, you love me. That kind of... Then Krishna told the gopis, I can't repay you. They didn't pay him anything, but it was their love, their devotion, their sacrifice. For that, Krishna said, I can't repay you. So, manam tanoti, out of great regard for Krishna and Balaram, if there's a debt, he's walking on me. How much would we feel obliged or indebted or appreciative if Krishna were to walk on us? Wow. And if, will you accept something? I brought some flowers, will you take them? Yes. Then how indebted we feel. Krishna took my flowers. So every day, Krishna and Govardhan is offering in that way. He's offering fruits and flowers and roots. He's offering grass for the cows. He's offering water. He's offering places to play and enjoy. So, and Krishna's accepting. So how grateful Govardhan is. Krishna is accepting my service. Krishna is accepting my service. Manam tanoti tasago. Yes. No, I don't. Do I? Yeah, I do. Hold on. Just see what comes there. I don't know that we'll get anything from this, but Yeah. Mana means to honor, to respect. Yeah. Okay. Is that all right?
Да, большое спасибо, очень красивое объяснение.
Spasibo. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj, so much for such a beautiful explanation.
Anything else?
Раз ни у кого нет вопросов, у меня есть.
Since seems like no one else has any questions, then I will ask more.
Okay.
Я вот как Матаджи хочу спросить про этих женщин-аборигенов.
So following up Mataji's question, I also would like ask about the Aborigine ladies.
About
Aborigine ladies. Aborigine.
the Aborigines.
Говорится, что у них есть вожделение, и они удовлетворяют это вожделение посредством посыпания пыли с лотосных стоп, покрытых куркумой, то есть вот кункумой.
And we've heard that they have these lusty desires, but they become satisfied by smearing their bodies with this kumkum from Krishna's lotus feet.
Мой вопрос заключается в следующем. Что это за вожделение? Это вожделение материального мира? Или это камануга? Или что это? Что это за вожделение?
So my question is, what kind of this feeling?
What kind of?
This feeling of lusty desires? Is it kamanuga or some material desires? What is the origin? What is the root of this desire?
It's described as straight lust. Sense gratification.
Это материальный или духовный мир?
And we talking about spiritual or material world here?
No, with their lovers and their lusty desires, it's all about sense gratification. They feel lust, ordinary garden variety, plain material lust. They have sex desire. They have strong desire for sexual satisfaction. That's what's being described. A strong desire for sexual satisfaction. But still they're not satisfied. You know, they're involved with the lovers and the lovers are touching them and, you know, they're having their loving dealings and still they're, you know, not enough. And then they smear this kumkum on their faces and breasts. Then they're satisfied. Then they're we were in Bihar one time. I was in Bihar with Padayatra in the middle of the summer. We were in, I think it was Patna, the capital. And to be walking on Padayatra was nice in the countryside. In the cities, it was really awful because you're on the city streets, you're not under the trees and a nice, pleasant countryside, country road. You're on some highway or major thoroughfare, and these lorries are going by, and it was the middle of the summer, and it was the middle of the day, you know, like hot. You know, and it had been a long walk, city, hot. When the lorries go by, the lorries, like now we like these heaters like this, right? Because they have these metal sides with heat and it radiates and we feel a little happiness. The sides of the lorries are like that. You know, these steel sides, and they're in the sun all day and they're just radiating heat. And they're going past you, and you're already hot from walking. You're already hot because the sun is beating down. And now there's these lorries going by you and broadcasting heat. It was so hot and exhausting. It was so hot, you'd look at yogurt and think, you know, too much. I couldn't eat it. You know, it's too hot. It's too much. Nothing there's nothing you could take. You drink some water, yeah, okay, but you're still hot and exhausted. And as we were there was a flatbed, one of those little flatbed carts with someone who was selling lychee. Lychee. Do you know lychee fruit? It's reddish on the outside, little spikes, sort of, and then you take off the outer shell or husk, and there's like a translucent whitish, clearish fruit there. And so there was someone selling these little bags of fruit, and someone, bought some. And the quality, you don't appreciate lychee. Somebody gives you some apples, some oranges, some lychee, fruit salad, nice. But in the middle of the summer in Bihar, this lychee is like air conditioning. The quality of lychee is that it's super cooling. So we got these lychees, and it was like, wow. And Bihar is like the place for lychees also. Just as like Allahabad is for amrut, what's amrut? Guava. Allahabad is famous for, every place is famous for something. Allahabad, it's guava. Agra, it's peta. Mathura, it's peta. Agra, it's peta. So there are different things. So Bihar, one of the premier items, you get the best lychees in Bihar. So when we got these lychees, it was like, wow, we've attained the spiritual world, Nothing else could satisfy us, but these lychees, it's like beyond description. So that relief, because we were being tortured by the heat. We were being afflicted by intense heat. And then when the lychees were there, it was like, oh, wow. So these Aborigine girls were being afflicted by the heat of intense sex desire. But when they just smeared on their heads and on their faces and breasts this kumkum from Krishna's lotus feet, then they were satisfied. Then they were satisfied. That means, they're accusing Krishna of being lusty. Krishna's so much the opposite, that lusty desire is cured by even thinking of Krishna. Even by thinking of Krishna, or by actually having the dust of his lotus feet on one's head, one becomes cured of lusty desire. So that happened in the experience of the Aborigine girls. They were not very satisfied by their lusty dealings with their husbands. But when they just smeared on their faces and breasts this kumkum, they were completely satisfied. Is that okay?
Да, спасибо большое. Очень красивый вывод. Мне очень понравилось.
Yes, thank you so much, Maharaj. Such a beautiful conclusion.
Switch.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Actually, some time ago, one of my friend in my office, he mentioned, the description like in this chapter is given, the description of, the about the lust, about the breast, and about smearing all those things. So he mentioned that he felt like reading some kind of a sex books, kind of description given in this. So he says that God cannot be like that, my God cannot be like that, So how to answer him,
His God can't be like that. Our God can be like that.
So it just so happened, first time I came in this class, and then this part came in this chapter. So he had asked me this question.
This is just like the hospital. You hear about the ghastly wounds that people have. You know, their bones are protruding through their sides, or they've got an open wound in their stomach, or you hear about all these terrible things. But it's not because this sounds good. There are lots of blood and guts and all of that. But we're interested in hearing about the cure, how the doctor mended the bones and fixed the wound and all of that. It's not that we're just taking pleasure in hearing about the sufferings of the patients, but the real story is how it was cured. There are many writers, sort of medical accounts, both professional and popular. So in the popular accounts, they tell you something about the horrible disease, but it's not that because we love to hear about. The real story is how the heroic doctors cured the disease, treated the disease. That's not like ghoulish literature, for people who like to hear about blood. You've got your focus wrong. The focus is on the heroic doctors who cured the disease. So that's the story here. It's not that we're interested in hearing about Aborigine girls and their breasts and their lusts and all of that. What do we care? The whole world is filled with plenty of Aborigine girls with lust and this and that and the other thing. That's not our interest. We're not interested in that. We're only interested because Krishna is there. And what's the effect of Krishna being there? Their lust went away. So if you hear about Krishna, your lusty desires will also go away. And then maybe Krishna will be your God also. Is that okay? Otherwise, for those who feel disturbed, therefore this is also in the 10th canto. You're coming to the 10th canto, which is the advanced course. Start in the beginning. Read Bhagavad-Gita. Read first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Tada rajastamo bhava kamalobhadayastriye chete taranabidtam stitam sattve prasidati evam prasanna manaso. You read learn the science of bhakti-yoga from the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and you find that by rendering devotional service to Krishna, by hearing, by chanting, by serving devotees, the modes of passion and ignorance, along with lust and greed and so on, subside. So if you're disturbed by hearing these topics, don't hear them. This is the advanced course. Just like, some child is somehow picked up a trigonometry book and is, I'm confused, I don't understand any of this, it doesn't make sense. Well, you're supposed to be reading multiplication tables and, the simple stuff. So go back to where you're meant to be and come back later after, a couple of years, and then trigonometry may start to make sense to you. But if you jump right into the middle of trigonometry, what to speak of quantum mechanics or something like that. So you just start. If this disturbs your mind, don't hear it. It's not meant for you. Just like in medicine. There are different medicines prescribed for different people. It's not that you go into the pharmacy and say, what's the strongest thing that you got? I need the strongest medicine you have. No, you take what the doctor has prescribed for you. That will act beneficially. And the stronger medicine, although it's stronger, may not be the right medicine for you. So, bhavoshadat, these things are medicine, but one is recommended. Don't start up here in the 10th canto. the medicine may be too strong for you. You start here, Bhagavad-Gita, then first canto, second canto, third canto. When you come to the end of the 9th canto, then you can start reading 10th canto. Gradually you'll come to these topics, and then you'll appreciate it.
Thank you, Maharaj. I will try to say, mention to him like you mentioned. So I was convinced about, what is written is not wrong, but he was still, questioning, no, cannot be that, someone who has written is not written the right way or something, my God cannot be like that.
First, you have to understand who Krishna is. When you understand Krishna tattvata, factually, then you can begin to understand these pastimes. Otherwise, we'll think that Krishna is something like a lusty boy, he's something like us, gopis, or something like our girlfriends or wives. We'll misunderstand everything. So first learn the science of Krishna, then you can appreciate. Then you can appreciate. Yeah. In Ayurveda, there's a part of one method of treatment is by bloodletting. If the blood is contaminated, then the blood is extracted from the body using, what do they call those? Leeches. Leeches. You may see a little jar with these leeches, and it's, it seems like, ooh, this is like disgusting and primitive and maybe dangerous and, get me out of here. But if you study Ayurveda step by step, then you understand what the role is of this bloodletting, and you understand why they employ the leeches for this purpose. But if you just come in and you look at it, you say, oh. So everything, there's a science. So first you understand the science of Krishna. Then in the advanced stage, you come to this 10th canto and Krishna's dealings with the gopis. Otherwise, you're jumping into the most confidential part, and you're not qualified to understand it. You're not qualified to understand it. You first become qualified, and then you'll relish it. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the strictest sannyasi. He was the strictest sannyasi. His female followers had to offer obeisances from a distance. He never joked with women. He was a very strict sannyasi. Banished Junior Haridas for just this minor, offense involving women. He was strictest, and yet he's relishing these topics. Sukadeva Goswami, he's so free from any sexual interest that the girls saw him passing by. They were bathing, didn't even bother to dress. Just like, women, they may be naked and there's some little child. No one panics. The ladies don't think, well, where's my clothes? He's a child. What does he see? So by seeing the face of Shukadeva Goswami, they understood he's like that. He has no sex desire. It doesn't even register. And yet that same Shukadeva Goswami is relishing these topics, reciting these topics to Maharaj Parikshit. That means we should pick up the clue from that this literature is not that literature. You think Shukadeva Goswami would be like reading a sex novel to Maharaj Parikshit at the end of his life? Maharaj King, you have only 7 days left. Let's read a hot novel. Maharaj Parikshit wasn't that kind of person, and Shukadev Goswami wasn't that kind of person. So why were they reading these topics? Why were they immersed in these topics? One has to pick up the clue. That means it's something else. That means it's something else. It's not what we think it is.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Well, last question.
Yeah.
Today we've favored questions about Krishna and the flute over ISKCON Katha. So that's life. We'll talk about ISKCON some other time. Sorry about that. Yes.
Just a quick comment. A part of the Krishna book introduction deals with this aspect of Prabhupada, really goes into it. He describes the attraction between boys and girls, and then the natural feeling that is actually there in the spiritual world. And but by listening to these topics, one becomes purified eventually. So
yeah. One needs the ability to distinguish between the reality and the reflection. Your friend is used to the reflection, so he can't understand the reality. The cow in the barn, once there was a fire, now whenever the cow sees red, she thinks it's fire. So we have this, we live in this world where everything's about material desire, material lusts. And so when we hear about Krishna and the gopis, we think, well, this must be the same thing. But no, it's different. And Kaviraj Goswami gives the example, like the difference between iron and gold. They're both metals, but they're not the same. Okay. And thank you very much. And who's leading Kirtan today? Where you could, but we just ran out of time. समय खत्म हो गया. Are you leading? Are you leading again? You're welcome. If you'd like to lead. Yeah, it was very nice yesterday.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Jai Om Vishnupad Punamhansa Parivrajaka Sto Tulasadashi Shrimad AC Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Adanta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Tham Ki Jai Navdeep Tham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamana Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande.